This is an iOS tutorial, and this video will be about methods, dot notation, and bracket notation. Okay, so I already made an example project, so we'll just jump right in here. And hopefully, as you know, having followed all of the videos so far, all of these are methods. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 methods in this file. And our first method is viewDidLoad. So when it runs, viewDidLoad is going to execute. And the first thing I did here is I wanted to show off bracket notation and dot notation. And this is the basics of bracket notation syntax right here. Basically, the first word is going to be the name of the object you are using to invoke the method. In other words, the name of the object that has the particular method you're invoking. In this case, it's self. So we're invoking this method on ourself. So we go to this print something method here, and the next word is going to be the name of the method itself. So name of object, name of method. This will invoke the print something method. It'll write something to NSLog. This is exactly the same thing down here in dot notation. Okay, but typically it's poor form to use the dot for this. Dot is typically used to access properties, which we covered in the last video. So you don't necessarily want to do this, but it will work, just like this will work up here. And then for our next thing, I want to go into detail about method, the syntax, and how it works exactly. So I want you to focus on this line here. The first character is always one of two things. It's going to be a minus or a plus. A minus means it's an instance method, and a plus means it's a class method. I will get more into that later. We will invoke both a class method and an instance method in this example. But essentially, an instance method is invoked on an object, and a class method is invoked on a class. So that's how to remember the two. And here, this is the return type. So whenever you have a function that has a return type, you will have a return statement like this. And this will also end the function. As soon as this executes, the function is over, and it's going to return whatever value you put to the right of the function. And in this case, it's a string with format, and then we use the format string to concatenate str1 and str2. Okay, and it's very important that this matches up with this, because that's what the compiler is expecting, and that is what the person who's using your function is expecting. So from there, we've got the return type, the return statement, the minus plus. Next is the name, kind of. And names of functions in Objective-C are kind of split up weirdly. The name of this is probably concatenate strings would be the name of the function if you had to give it a name. All right, and what happens is you put part of the name, you put a colon, and then next is a parameter. So we have concatenate, colon, then one parameter. This is the parameter type is NSString star, and then the name of it. And then we have another one called NSString star string 2. And the reason why we have parameters is as follows. If you watched the last video, we talked about scope, right? And something that is declared, for example, in viewDidLoad here, cannot necessarily be seen by this function, concatenate. And sometimes we want it to be seen. So one way to deal with that is to pass the function parameters. So what we do here is we take in a string 1 and a string 2, and when we invoke concatenate up here, you'll see we do self, that's the object, and then we use the name, the first part of the name, and then we pass in 1, 2, 3. And then we do strings 4, 5, 6. So what that does is when this function is invoked, string 1 will line up with 1, 2, 3. String 2 is equal to 4, 5, 6. Then we can just return the whole thing put together. It'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and now for the last part of this, I'm going to show you how to create and invoke a class method. Okay, for this, I made my class method in our app.delegate file. So I had to include app.delegate.h to make this work. And right here is going to be our class method. You'll notice a plus here. That means it's a class method, not an instance method. The return type is int this time, so that means we have to return x plus y, and that value is an integer since x and y are integers, so it's okay. And then here, the parameters, we take an integer x and an integer y. So if we go back here, look at this invocation of our method. So instead of self, or instead of a name of an object, what we have here is the name of a class. So that's the key difference. This is, if it was an instance method, what we would have to do is appDelegate AD equals appDelegate, no, alloc init. Okay? And then we could invoke methods. We can then use this. We would just do AD add for numbers 5. But this will not work because it's a class method. And not an instance method. So because class methods only work on names of classes, you cannot use the add method with this object AD. So we can forget about that. But that's the key difference between how they're invoked. And so now if we run this, just to show you that it works, if you notice down our NSLog, we have something, because we did self print something. The next line is commented out, but here we activated this function, it printed something, good. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It does self concatenate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then in our method, it returns we use our string with format method to merge the strings together and return that. So that's good. And then we have 9 from 4 and 5. So basically that's how methods work. This has been another iOS tutorial.